Wow, that's a big crowd. So how many of you were at Consensus last year? Can you raise your hand? So if you were here last year, Ryan started the conference with a joke. And the joke was actually not a joke, but he said, look to your right, look to your left. One of them is from Deloitte. At this conference today, you can look to your right, look to your left, you can look above, you can look underneath. Someone is from Deloitte. I want to introduce you to the new Deloitte, the Deloitte you might not know about blockchain. And we started 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we were just 3 of us, and Rob and Prakash are in the room somewhere. And today, we are if it's working, we have a 20 team. We have 20 countries covered with our blockchain teams, 800 people, covering everything from technology to regulatory to risk to compliance to tax. Everything you can think of regarding blockchain, we can cover it. And that's the new Deloitte, the Deloitte you don't know. We are building blockchain solutions. We've done 35 solutions so far. And a lot of the teams in the room here, the Deloitte teams, have been part of that. We have 2 labs, one in New York that we opened in January, one in Dublin that we opened in January as well. And we are opening up a new lab in Asia. We are going beyond the West. In, I guess, 4 weeks now, we're going to open a new lab. So the intent is to cover every client that we have, to have technical expertise in every one of those labs, and also to cover every one of the industries that we cover today as Deloitte. We started in financial services, but today you can tell every industry from life science to oil and gas to supply chain is actually investing in blockchain. And that's where we are. We are serving our clients in the different geographies with all our blockchain capabilities. Last year, we did a lot of use cases and a lot of POCs, all of us. I think, all of us are tired of POCs. If you're not tired of POCs, raise your hand. I'm tired of doing POCs. But what we need to do in 2017 is we need to take it live. We need to take blockchain live. The key to us is to translate the investment that we've made as Deloitte, but as an industry, into something that we can scale, we can actually transact on. And that's a very important piece of our strategy, and I think it's a very important piece for everybody in this room, is to translate what we've done into a live solution. Yeah, so you have the beginning of that in different industries, but I think we need to go much, much bigger than we are. And for that reason, we are announcing today 2 new participation as membership. We are joining the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, and we are joining Hyperledger. And the reason we are joining those 2 is actually 3 reasons. The first one is we've been working on Ethereum and Hyperledger for quite some time now, so it's not a new topic for us. But now we want to translate our expertise and our business acumen into new requirements for Hyperledger and the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So very important for us to actively participate in those consortiums. The second reason is because those companies or those consortiums or those groups or projects are extremely active in the space. And if you look at how many developers are working on those 2 platforms, you're going to find probably 80% of the population in blockchain today. So for us, it's very important. And then the third reason is because we want to stay vendor agnostic. We want to stay blockchain agnostic. We don't want to pick one blockchain and invest everything that we have on one platform. We want to do what's best for our clients. And until we talk to our clients, we don't know which platform is going to be the best. So that's what we have decided to do, those 2. Very important for us. In addition to that, and if you were here last year we announced 5 partnerships with specific startups. And this year, we are announcing 4 more alliances. AlphaPoint, and I think Ted is somewhere here. Monax, and I saw Casey earlier. I don't know if Peter is here from Settle. I haven't seen Peter yet. And then finally Symbiont, and I know Mark is here. So those startups working with us in our labs in Dublin, New York, and Asia coming up, very important part of our strategy to build the next generation of platforms with them in the context of Hyperledger, Ethereum, and others. So now our ecosystem is, I would say, almost complete, and now we are building the next generation of platforms. Here at Consensus, you can go and you can see what we've done on trade finance, and we'll talk about trade finance in a minute. You can see what we've done on regulatory reporting. You can see what we've done on Know Your Customer, KYC, what we've done on reinsurance, covering not only banking, but reinsurance, what we've done on voting platform. We have a voting platform that you can use and have your different participants vote. We have a loyalty and reward platform that we are actually using internally for almost 18 months now, and it's live. It's a blockchain solution that we have that's up and running. So we've done a lot of things, 35 solutions, 6 are here, actually 7. We have another one on the 7th floor about real estate if you're interested. So I invite you to go and visit those solutions. And then, to take it live, to take blockchain live, we have to go beyond just the POC and just the technology, right? Technology is 20% of the issue, maybe less. The challenge that we have today is nothing has been at scale in production in that space, right? How many of you have seen a blockchain platform running with more than 10,000 people, right? No one. That doesn't exist yet. And it will come, but what we've done, and we looked back for the last, of what we've done over the last 3 years, and we said, what are the lessons learned? What we could have done as an industry and as Deloitte differently to make sure that we would be today in a position to go live. And so the first POV that we have, that we are publishing today is what we call the 20 questions. Those are the 20 questions you need to ask yourself before you go live in production. From technology architecture to regulatory to legal frameworks to the creation of those infamous consortiums. All of that is actually covered into that POV. The second one is about risk. And one of the reasons some of the startups stopped working or some of the projects didn't go all the way through is because we have a lack of risk framework and risk appetite for those platforms from the regulator and from the technologist. And then finally, cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is very important to us, very important for our clients, and we have a deep dive on that topic specifically. We keep having a very important relationship with the World Economic Forum, where we built some very strong eminence, if you've seen that. The MIT Media Lab, as well as the Chamber of Digital Commerce, and I think Perian is somewhere here. So a very extensive ecosystem from an eminence point of view as well. So that's the new Deloitte, the Deloitte you might not be aware of when it comes to blockchain. I just wanted to give you that perspective before we actually talk about one specific use case, trade finance, and our Mercury platform. And for that, I'm going to get the mic back to Tarek, and he's going to invite my client with my team on the floor to talk about specifically what we've done to take blockchain live. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Eric. Okay, so now we have the new panelists for our next presentation. Taking blockchain live. Come on down, let's do this. Yeah, and please give them a round of applause. All right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Eric, for that very encouraging overview. Now we're going to focus on one particular blockchain proof of concept coming out of Deloitte Blockchain Labs, and that is a trade finance application developed by Deloitte in conjunction with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And I'm sitting here with Laurie Kehoe, the EMEA Blockchain Lab leader with Deloitte, and Brian Lam, the FinTech Facilitation Officer of the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. Thank you both so much for flying in from completely opposite directions to be here today.
Thank you.
Laurie, let's start with you. You're based in Dublin. What is a guy from Dublin doing working on a trade finance proof of concept in Hong Kong?
Sure, yeah, it's a funny one. It was actually about a year ago now where I was at a fintech conference in Hong Kong, actually run by the HKMA. And I got chatting to another panelist, and we were just talking about big, I guess, focus points for him and his job, and one area was trade finance. So I was telling him about that. We actually have a platform, which Eric mentioned there, called Mercury. So it's, I guess, trying to solve that trade finance issue using distributed ledger technology. So one thing led to another. They told us about this working group in the HKMA, and effectively we pitched for the work, and we ended up winning it, and we ended up working on the proof of concept. But I think most importantly, I literally would not be sitting here right now speaking with you or here if it wasn't actually for, I suppose, networking at conferences. So it's kind of a cool way to bring the story on.
You're all taking note, right? That's why you come to consensus. Brian, why did the Hong Kong Monetary Authority commission the blockchain proof of concept? What's the story there?
Well, to answer your question, let me briefly talk about what we do, okay? Our office is to facilitate the healthy development of the fintech ecosystem of Hong Kong and to promote Hong Kong as a fintech hub in Asia. In order to do that, we've got a number of objectives. You can say, let me quickly go through that, is to act as a platform for exchanging ideas and interface between market participants and regulators, and a facilitator to nurture talents, and last but not least, an initiator of industry research in potential application. So last year when our office got established, our first task is to write a white paper on blockchain. So we have commissioned ASHRI, which is the one of the government research institute, to write the white paper for us. And at that time, and then we went like, oh, if you just write the white paper, it's like going to the internet and then search for what is blockchain. Then probably 1 million website result will come out. Then I said it's going to be a bit boring. So what then we went on and suggested, why not build some POCs so that we can use that to illustrate the white paper to make people understand it better. So that's why we have that project.
Interesting to see how it works. Why trade finance? Why focus on that application?
Well, by looking at the characteristics of trade finance, it involves cross-border transaction, about trust and untrust relationship between different parties, and also very important is that one of the important roles of Hong Kong as the international trading hub, telling a quick, story about Hong Kong. Hong Kong used to be 100 years ago. Hong Kong was just like a small fishing village, and then it slowly transferred into a entry port doing business. And you know why Hong Kong called Hong Kong? For Chinese words, we've got meaning behind a word. So Hong Kong actually in Chinese, it means a pot that smells nice.
A pot that smells nice.
Yes.
That's lovely.
Yes, because Hong Kong used to be like a trading place that trade an incense that smell very nice. So that's why Hong Kong is like named after that. So as a result, because of the importance of international trading hub. So that's why we have picked trade finance as one of the proof of concept.
Interesting. Laurie, how does blockchain help with this? Can you talk us through the platform a bit, the advantages it offers?
Sure. So I think I guess from a Deloitte perspective, what we try and do is we try and solve problems. And why blockchain makes sense from a trade finance perspective is that it's a very clear problem, or there's a very clear set of problems that need to be solved. So it's about, I suppose, reducing fraud. It's about creating transparency. It's about creating a platform for multiple parties to use, engage, and share information in a secure way. So if you look at the requirements to build a solution for that, blockchain kind of ticks each one of those quite neatly. We don't always say, there's only just one, I guess, tool in our toolkit. So there are definitely instances when blockchain doesn't make sense, but certainly for trade finance, for that cross-border payment piece, for automatic payments, blockchain really does lend itself quite beautifully to that.
How so? Can you elaborate a bit?
So ultimately, I think when you have multiple parties who want to work together, who are using different systems, they struggle with that. And then it leads to, I guess, people not getting access to credit, as the case may be. So what you need is this common platform, common solution, which benefits all of them. And I think blockchain is that unique technology to help bring people together, to facilitate, I guess, the exchange of value in that instance.
And just for trade finance, or do you see the application spreading to other areas of the supply chain?
So, and this is a big question. Definitely, I think in supply chain, blockchain also makes a lot of sense. Why? Because whether it's moving food from one part of the world, from where I'm from in Ireland, so from a farm in Ireland right the way through to somebody's dinner plate, let's say in Shanghai, what people want, they want to be able to trust the information. They want to know where things come from and have that immutable data source and access to that, as well as all the different entities along the way having access to that information to show this is where it's at. I think the way society increasingly now has become is that we crave and expect near real-time data. And blockchain is going to facilitate that sharing of, I suppose, status tracking in a way which isn't really available today. And that's more in line with how we consume different products, whether it be Uber, WhatsApp, WeChat, whatever.
Interesting. Brian, could you tell us about the banks that you're working with on this project and why these particular banks stepped up?
Right. For the working group, we've got 5 different banks. 3 of them are the note issuing banks of Hong Kong, and they have quite a lot of business in this area, in trade finance. And for the other 2 banks, they are the 2 of the big local banks of Hong Kong. That's why we've got the 5 banks.
Interesting. And how does this affect the business community? I mean, one of the statistics that we've heard here at Consensus today is that 85% of small businesses can't get trade finance. Do the banks working with you on this see this as a business opportunity to increase their business in a trusted fashion?
Yes, I mean, because like what you said, because due to many different issues, it's difficult for the SME, we call it, it's difficult to get finance, and also due to the fraud that the bank may face. Maybe it's difficult for the smaller companies or smaller firms to get finance. So with blockchain, we've got many different advantages and benefits, so that it might get the financing easier and more possible in the future. It's going to be a good thing.
Laurie, how could the blockchain platform help the smaller firms improve their relationship with the big banks?
So I guess what it's going to be able to do is the tracking of information of those smaller providers. They're going to be able to show, I guess, their full financial history in a way and share it with multiple participants. So then banks will have access and, I guess, be able to perhaps adjust the way they risk those customers and then decide to take on their business or not, or lend them money as the case may be or not. So access to information and having that extra layer of, I suppose, visibility, transparency reduces that point where big banks will go, you know what, these guys are too small, there's too much risk, and then they fall outside the net.
Interesting. Brian, what are the next steps? Where do you see the next steps going?
Right, okay. So for the next steps, probably for the project itself, is really up to the banks to decide, because HKMA, as a regulator, we act only as a facilitator. So it's for them to decide whether to further commercialize it or not. because it's better for the commercial firm to decide, not for the regulators to push in that direction. And for our side, probably it's going to be the second phase of the white paper, because I mentioned the first phase of the white paper that we did last year, that we published on the FinTech Day, the 11th of November, was very much about on the technology to explain what blockchain is with examples, with POCs. But the second phase is going to be, we're going to look at the legal perspective, the regulatory and the governance, the control principles, side of blockchain. So it's going to be really interesting. So probably we're going to publish it later this year, probably in October, when we again have the FinTech Day in October.
In October, okay, we're looking forward to seeing that. Obviously, you can't speak for the other participants in the project, but what's the feedback been like so far?
It's very positive, actually. They're very quite positive about the project, and then because trade finance has been one of the difficult area, as you know, it involves quite a lot of different participants in the banking or even in logistics. It involves a lot of different people. I think in the history, already there has been quite a number of attempts to trying to centralize it or to make it a common platform, but it kind of failed. Hopefully this time it is going to work. Right?
And how do you see your role as a regulator in this?
Like what I just mentioned, as a regulator, our role is to act as a facilitator. It's like a middleman. Okay, to elaborate it a bit more, I'm from the FinTech office, FinTech facilitation office, not the regulator. So not in the regulator department. So what I do is like a bridge between the regulator, the real regulator, and the regulatee, which are the banks, to connect them together to like a bridge. And also, as a whole of HKMA, we are technology neutral. That means we only regulate the activities, not because of the technology that you use. We will not make it easier, and we will not make it more difficult for the banks because of the technology they have adopted. But of course, we will encourage the banks to adopt technologies because it will raise the level of customer experience. Of course, you have to look at the risk to strike the right balance as well. Make sure all the customer interests are protected.
So it's a question of encouraging the experimentation while at the same time protecting the consumer.
Yes, certainly.
Laurie, there have been many blockchain POCs in the trade finance area, I suppose. How is this one different?
Yeah, good question. It's different based on a couple of things. So firstly, I'd say it was the first trade finance POC in Hong Kong in that specific region, which is definitely unique. We had the 5 banks obviously involved, which is interesting. It's a larger consortium. Also, I guess from a Deloitte perspective, it was a global project. So we had people, we were obviously our Deloitte Canadian colleagues who developed the Mercury platform. Also then teams, people from Ireland, people from the US, in order to, I guess, put forward the best possible team as we could. But really, all that stuff is important, but really what makes it unique, it's Brian and it's the HKMA, to be very frank. Because what you had is you have the 5 banks who are, which is great, coming together to work on a problem, which is rare. Which, let's be honest about that.
Yeah, covering the whole sector.
Yeah, exactly, right? Sharing isn't always the kind of go-to option when it comes to solving problems and working with your competitors. So that was unique, but I think certainly for me and for the team, it was having the regulator drive the group, act as arbitrator, but also put forward some suggestions, requirements as well. And that for me was the really unique thing about this specific project, because then you're working on a project with the regulator from the start. So instead of building something which is unique and cool, if they're part of the process, then as you begin to move on and the project turns from a POC to a pilot to production, their requirements are there all along. So that time frame will actually compress. So for me, that was probably the big thing.
And also for the, I guess, the learning experience, you're all learning together as this goes along.
Absolutely,
and shaping the policies to come.
And it also, just on that note, it also sets precedent to maybe there's other things that we can work together on. And maybe it's blockchain, which is great, but maybe there are other industry problems that also, it's going to take a consortium to come together to solve. So it's learning how to work together, how to play nice together, right?
Yeah, and with so many participants bringing ideas off each other, that's also encouraging. What has been one of the biggest takeaways from this for you?
Sure, and it probably goes to that last point and segues in, and that is the fact that it was all about collaboration. So we mentioned the 5 banks, the regulator, and Deloitte, but that was what was unique for me, working with 5 institutions where basically, or 6 institutions if you include the HKMA, but what strikes me about it was that they came together, they got sick of basically working in an antiquated process. So it's broken, and instead of waiting for someone else to fix it, which a lot of people do, they said, no, let's actually try and do something here. Let's try and go after something and solve this problem, but knowing that they couldn't do it on their own. So that, I think, for me is, that was one of the major takeaways. But then also, and this is a broader piece around DLT and blockchain, is that what it's doing across all sectors, FS and beyond, is that it's helping people to think about things in a very different way. And this is why the technologies, why I actually really love it. It's because people aren't thinking about 1% efficiency plays or 5% efficiency plays. When they start to think about blockchain, it starts opening questions as to, well, actually, why are we doing it this way? Can we design a whole new way so we don't have to do that work anymore in that way? And that, for me, is actually the really exciting part and actually why I love my job.
And so it's not a question of fitting blockchain into existing processes, it's asking what new processes that we've never been able to do before can we do now?
Absolutely.
And again, to do that in conjunction with regulators, such an important regulator as the HKMA as well, with the collaboration of some of the biggest banks in the region. Well, thank you both so much for talking to us about this. It's definitely a very exciting project, not only because it's a real-world application of blockchain technology solving a real-world problem, but also because of the potential impact, not only in the economy of Hong Kong, which will be very significant, but also the economy on the world stage as well. Thank you both very much. Thank you all for being here.